Okay, today is the day they finally reviewed Argenti or gave the character preview. We went over Argenti in many videos in the past, but we'll do a quick refresher for those of you that are new to the channel or have no idea what Argenti does because maybe to you, he is probably still confusing, right? Yo, what up? Toshi here. All right, so we knew that Argenti was physical in erudition. All right, so his trace is piety. Whenever he starts to turn, he gets a set number of apoptosis stacks. Apoptosis. I said apotheosis, right? Apotheosis. When enemy enters battle, he immediately regenerates energy for himself, and that's his second trace, regenerosity. This is very good because this helps with getting his ult at the start of the battle. Courage is his third trace, and he deals more damage to enemies whose HP percentage is less than probably 50%. They said a certain amount, but we can probably infer 50%. So his basic attack just deals physical damage to a single enemy, nothing really special, just like any other character in the game. Although whenever he does hit his target, roses come out. I think that's pretty cool. All right, so he dazes enemies with his technique, kind of like Huo's horror technique, right? Where she stops the enemies or she pushes the enemies away, but this is kind of a stun, so it's like different. Kind of like Sampo's smoke screen with his technique. Maybe not that exact same way, but his technique is very strong because this allows him, well, whenever you do start the battle, you get energy, which is very, very strong. So this goes into the energy gain from his second trace, which gives him more energy. And if you have one of the 4-star light cones we talked about in previous videos, you'll have a lot of energy as soon as you start the fight. Sublime Object. So this is pretty much the Apotheosis passive. Wherever he attacks enemy with the base attack elemental skill and ultimate, he gets energy and he increases his crit rate, and that stacks, of course. Now, the thing is about this versus like Jinglu, where Jinglu gets crit rate whenever she gets stacks from her Syzygy, if I'm saying the name right, Syzygy, and Argenti gets the stacks slowly, whereas Jinglu gets the stacks as soon as she has enough stacks from her Syzygy, right? So Argenti has two ults here. It's showing one of them, I believe, because there is another one that does a extra effect at the end where it does a bunch of slashes, and that's the second charge of his ultimate. But this is the first charge. It's really, really nice of an animation. I really do like it. It hits all enemies, of course, and it does AoE damage. Nothing really special. And then he consumes more energy with the second charge of his passive, right, for his ultimate. And then this does additional damage to enemies. Think of this as Jing Lightning Lord damage, right? The extra procs from Lightning Lord. This is essentially the same thing, except it is a little different because it's not necessarily a bunch of random hits. It's just random hits on top of the AoE damage he already does. And just like Jing, if you are hitting one target or you use him in single target fights, he's going to use all of those additional hits on that single enemy. So we have Jing right here. How does Argenti compare to Jing, first of all? He's probably not on par with Jing, and the reason why is because Jing has received many pseudo buffs that has allowed this character to be much better. Now, Argenti is a character that needs a lot of teammates or specific teammates to get the job done, whereas Jing doesn't necessarily need, I mean, he does need specific teammates, but he's more flexible than Argenti, if that makes sense. So, in terms of DPS raw damage, Argenti definitely can put out more damage, but you have to take into consideration that he is more expensive to battery versus a character like Jing that isn't as expensive to battery. And on top of that, Argenti is a character, again, that is not as flexible as Jing. So, if future characters come out, you have to take into consideration they might not be good choices for Argenti, whereas they would be good choices for Jing, because, again, Jing is a more flexible character. Ting Yun is going to be a must-use because she provides a lot of energy, and for a character that has 2 charges to his ultimate, the energy she gives to him is going to allow him to perform in his hyper-carry teams. Bronyan's an interesting one because she pushes every action forward, allowing you to be able to use attack boots on Argenti, but keep in mind that the skill point consumption with Bronya is going to be really heavy, especially if you're using an elemental skill on Argenti every time you take his turn. That's going to be 2 skill points more or less every turn unless you have Auto on 1 in her light cone. So Bronya is a very solid choice, and she does buff your damage up greatly, and since Argenti is a character that does not have any backloaded damage, he's going to take advantage of Bronya's kit to the full capacity. And definitely not surprising, but Whoa is a character that works extremely well for Argenti, right? The 20% energy she gives to the character allows him to get his ult much more faster. We're talking like it is an additional turn of energy worth for Argenti from Huo. That is very, very, very strong. The thing is about erudition characters, you're looking at to dish out as much damage as you can against enemies in AoE settings. That's pretty much self-explanatory. Jing is a character that is able to whittle down enemies until the Light Lord takes the turn and then it dishes out as much damage as that lightning lure can, depending on the buffs you have on Jing at the time. The thing is about Argenti, he's a character where you're looking to one-shot whenever you do get his second charge to his ultimate. So he is a feast or famine or all or nothing character, whereas Jing is a character that isn't necessarily a feast or famine type of character. That makes sense. He does a lot of damage now with Topaz, right? So while you can put Jing in a hyper carry team, you're not really looking to necessarily do that. I mean, he works really well with Topaz now in a dual DPS team setup. So Jing is a completely different character compared to Argenti, whereas Argenti is a character that can only be used in hyper carry teams. Only be used in hyper carry teams. Contrary to that, since he can utilize some of the best supports in the game, he is able to dish out a ton of damage. We're talking he's going to be the hardest hitting AoE damage dealer in the game at the time of his release. But for a lot of players, you probably already have Clara, and you probably have a Clara that is well invested into at this point. So do you really need to go for another physical AoE damage dealer when Clara can kind of cover that niche for you if you really wanted to have a character that fills that niche? So for a lot of people, you probably will skip Argenti because you have this character built and, like I said, well invested to. Now, you can actually take her relics and put it on Argenti, and well, since they're both built the same way primarily, I mean, mostly attack on Clara and crit damage, and then HP and defense is like an afterthought, whereas Argenti is pretty much built the same way. You'll be able to take advantage of your Clara build, which isn't the worst thing in the world, because of course Argenti is going to hit harder than Clara, but again, that is 150 pulls you have to roll on the banner for, worst case scenario. Now, while Himiko is a character that's also a Radition, she is much more flexible than Argenti because her playstyle is slightly different. You can utilize her follow-up attack playstyle and put her with Topaz, who will both benefit one another, whereas Argenti doesn't have a character or a team like that. Again, he's a straight up AoE damage dealer. There's nothing too special about him compared to Himiko and Jing. So maybe there is some synergy to be had with Kafka. As an AoE damage dealer, the physical element, you break the toughness of the enemy, and you're able to put the bleed dot on those enemies, and Kafka can detonate those dots with her AoE. That sounds very solid on paper, but again, he's a character that's just very expensive to funnel energy towards. And if you're looking to, funnel energy towards him or buff up his damage compared to other characters, right, like Kafka, for instance, who detonates the dots directly, you're using Ting Yun, you're going to be funneling energy to Kafka, not necessarily to Argenti. Just use him in hyper carry. That sounds kind of, I personally want to do it. Knock yourself out if you want to, though. But for free to play, since he is a character of the Radition path that is mostly focused on dishing out as much damage as it can with his ultimate and needing a lot of energy to be funneled towards his ult, you're going to love the best light cone for the character in 4-star options, and that's going to be Make the World Clamor. You get energy gain, and you increase your ultimate damage. That is all the character needs, and the fact of the matter is, since we get it for free, that makes it even better. So, he is a much more free-to-play friendly character because of this. So there you have it. Now, Argenti is not a bad character. He is a great character. The problem is that there's so many AoE damage dealers in the game currently. It's just the destruction being a path that just runs rampant in pretty much all stages of the game. I just think the ones here to blame is the destruction path. Otherwise, if that path didn't do exactly what it does now, then Argenti would be a character that seems a lot more enticing for players across the board. But we can all agree, since the path of destruction and characters like, Dan Heng, characters like, Jinglu, and then Clara being a physical AoE damage dealer that pretty much covers that niche, you don't really need a character, like you don't need Argenti, right? So you're basically pulling based on aesthetics. That's not a bad way to play the game. I think everyone should play the game the way they want to play it, but don't be surprised that there's going to be tons of players skipping. And the only reason why I'm rolling for him is because it's just content for me, right? Honestly. That's going to be the video here. Thank you for watching and have a nice rest of your day. Peace.